Good afternoon. I'm Ellie Sullivan, co-chair of the Special Programs Committee of the City Club. Our program today is Closing the Achievement Gap. Our guest speaker, former Ohio Senator C.J. Prentiss, was tapped by Governor Strickland in March of 2007 to act as his special representative charged with identifying changes that would result in the improvement of Ohio's schools. This role is part of the governor's initiative for increasing the graduation rate, an initiative that was created in 2007 to increase the graduation rate for all ninth grade male students with a focus on African American males. Ms. Prentiss, a former teacher, long steeped in education, practice, and policy, was a logical choice for this valuable assignment. In addition to classroom duties, she served a 6-year term beginning in 1985 on the Ohio State Board of Education. She went on to spend 15 years in the Ohio General Assembly, where she became known as the highest-ranking African-American education lawmaker in the state of Ohio. While in the Ohio Senate, she was elected by her caucus and served as minority leader. Now it is my great pleasure to ask Senator C.J. Prentiss to now grace the City Club podium with remarks regarding her work in education in general and her current responsibilities in particular. C.J.?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ellie. I would like to direct the audience to get your folder because we're going to be working through that as we go along. My first duty, I think, though, is to acknowledge part of my staff that's here, and that's Nelson. I have 6 staff persons from across the state who are relegated to regions within the state, and Nelson Ramirez, who is passing out some things, is the regional manager for Lorain, Toledo, Cleveland, where else? Sandusky. But none of this could happen without the dedication of our 6 staff persons. Let me first of all give you a framework, and if you look at this brochure that we have prepared, it sort of goes through some of the things I want to talk about. In general, the governor basically said, we will not have any more throwaway kids. And when he said that, we were looking at data that would suggest that the child that was in most trouble at this point was the African American male. So then he dedicated $20 million to be used over a 2-year period to implement strategies that would increase the graduation rate for African American males. Again, just for FYI, there are 33 high schools that were identified to be in this program throughout the state of Ohio. The way we identified them was to look at the graduation rate of the 2005-2006 school year to identify high schools that had a 70% or less graduation rate. Now, within that category of those 33 high schools, one of our schools in Cleveland had a 29% graduation rate. And so it fluctuated from a low of 29%, frankly, to a high of about 70%. And then we felt, frankly, that these schools were in trouble. Or at least the graduation rate was in trouble, and we needed to concentrate some efforts in that regard. Then we decided to not have the money just go to everybody, but to really select children who were at risk. And we identified 4 risk factors. We thought that if the child had failed 2 major courses in the 8th grade, then they really needed to be put on the at-risk category. If the child was suspended 5 times or more, then that would be an indication of behavioral problems, and they too needed to be in the at-risk category. If the child was over age, they then needed to be put in the at-risk category. And finally, if the child was what, Nelson? I forgot.
36 days or more absences.
36 days or more of absence, then that too was an indicator of at risk. And you can find that in your booklet under what I am calling, I need you to think about it under the framework of social construction of hope. When we look at this baby, if you will, and I'm going to use the term baby, because in fact when we're looking at 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and we then decide to write them off, when their lives are just beginning. So you need to be thinking about them not as young adults, but as children that are just starting. When we look at this baby and we say, well, what is his mindset? When I was a state senator representing East Cleveland, we were talking about 78% single-head household. Where is the daddy? When we looked at, if you live where I live right on East Boulevard in St. Clair, and to walk to Glenville, I'd walk out and go to St. Clair Avenue. By the time I get to Glenville, I would have passed at least 5 or 6 boarded up businesses. I would have also passed a guy standing on the street corner with the 40 ounces in a brown paper bag. So I'm looking at, in order to provide hope, we as a society, a social construction of hope, we need to provide it as a society, recognizing that their environment, for the most part, does not. Their peer group, for the most part, has dropped out of school. We're talking about kids right now, when they come in, have failed 2 major courses in the 8th grade. We're talking about them missing 36 days or more in the last year. So this is, and we recognize that this is a tourniquet, because this stuff needs to start, this intervention, frankly, needs to start at a very early age. In fact, if I had, well, I'm going to give you some of that. What we're looking at now is the achievement gap is even evidence at age 3. And then if we look at our communities across the state where we've identified these high schools, older homes, and so the possibility of lead poisoning, which frankly goes right to the brain and deals with the cognitive thinking skills. How does the child make decisions? So they have a high risk of that. Again, as a legislator, I'm looking at the Glenville community, and more than 50% of the kids who were tested positive for lead poisoning in this city. So we're talking about early development stages. And when we get to kindergarten, what we're talking about is word attainment, word knowledge. And when we look at kids across the state, and in terms of testing out as they get to kindergarten, we're looking at children of poverty who have about a 5,000-6,000 word recognition versus middle and upper income kids who have 15,000 to 30,000 word recognition. And every test that is given based on how well you know the language. So we can begin to look at the achievement gap starting even back at, and I'm not even going to go with low weight babies, because we could go right there as well. And so we recognize that starting at the 9th grade is merely a way of just preventing that dropout rate as it stands right now. As we move forward and as we have dialogue with the governor in terms of this new budget, we're going to be pushing to go back as far as 4th grade. And I want to just tell you why we're doing that and point out a graph that you must really get in touch with. It will be in your folder. It's this graph. It's a longitudinal study that we did to look at the boys we are now working with in 9th grade. Where were they in 4th grade? Where were these same kids in 5th grade? Where were they in 6th grade? Where was the intervention within school districts that frankly is in law? So the question becomes, because in law, Ohio Revised Code 3301-so-and-so basically says that when we give the diagnostic tests, these happen to be my pieces of legislation, so I've watched them and I'm very proud of them and wanting to know, are they being implemented as No Child Left Behind is being implemented? You know, you've got this federal law that says you got to do X, Y, and Z for No Child Left Behind. What about state law?